get it started, yo. So, yo, it's your boy Kaveli, the Punisher White. You know what I'm saying? We here with our next beautiful episode of Shooting the Shh. And as you know, as I said before, I am the homie Kaveli, the Punisher White. Everything here was built by my homeboy Alter Alley, and he is also on the camera works, you know. So today we got a beautiful show. We got my good friend Tyrone, who's here under the tag of Fine Spray Art, and we also got a couple good people in the building. It looks like Era's on the couch with him, and also our good friend Murder Face has been here to a couple joints too. So I'm just glad to be in the building, man. How you doing today, Tyrone?
Doing good. Thanks for having me here. This is a blast. Like I was saying, it's nice to have had a week filled with conversation about art and things going on.
Yeah, absolutely, bro. I tell you what, man. I was looking at some of your art before I came in here to interview you and stuff, man. And you got some really good pieces, yo. So I just want to say kudos to you, my friend.
Well, this is Altered. Altered went and grabbed all the stuff that he found from me. I mean, I see pieces here from when I first started painting to current, like I've been painting for 12 years. So it's a really nice collection of stuff that I've done over the years.
I mean, that's what we like to do, man. We like to kind of go get, all of your stuff and show it to the people. So just so the people know, we are at spatial.io, and you could type TY in the search bar, and you could come in and kind of get a view of all Tyrone's cool art and everything like that. But looking at your profiles and your bios, man, it seems like there's a lot to you, Tyrone, man. So I like to ask you, like, how would you describe yourself and what you do out here in these streets?
Yeah. Well, I'm an artist. It's taken me, some time to get to that point, but I had a long life of other things. I was in tech for a while. I worked for IBM for 14 years, 20 years in IT. And I worked for Spatial for 2 years. And I was the first artist to sell an NFT out of Spatial. So it was a real progress, for me to go from painting and uncertain about what the future would hold to kind of bringing tech back into my life again. And it made a huge difference because it allowed me to meet so many artists and help them come onto the platform and then work with them to find a measure of success in their own spaces. I mean, I've been watching Altered since the day he started on Spatial. So it's nice to be able to come full circle like this and be on the other side, having run so many events in Spatial.
Heck yeah, man. And you know what, man? We are extra glad to have you, bro. And so like I see that your tag is fine spray paint art. Does that kind of incorporate your style of artistry also?
Yeah. If you go on Google and you type fine spray paint art, the first thing that's going to pop up is me. I've been doing it for 12 years, and every single painting that you see in here, I just use cans of spray paint. I don't use brushes. So for me, it's all about learning how to do that. And I've spent the last 12 years getting to a point where I feel confident that I can create a form of fine art with just spray paint. So it's very much something that a phrase that I've coined, and I'm proud of it. And it's something I look to see if there's others doing it. And there's performance spray paint art, right? People that do it on the streets and people watch
Sure.
and sell it to somebody. Always thought to myself when I saw that when I was younger, what would happen if you took your time? Like what had happened if you had weeks to create a piece, and learning it. It's been a real process because there's no one to learn from. So I've had to make it up as I'm going.
Really? I mean, so like, dude, that's so dope. So you're kind of you're like a self-taught,
Yep.
like spray painter, pretty much.
Yep. And every time I say spray paint, people have a tendency to think graffiti or murals or things like that. And it's like, no, I don't use any of those things. And the best compliment I get of my work is when people think I did it with an airbrush. And that's to me, that makes it too easy. I like it using spray cans because it's hard. And it was just one of those things where when I first started, I had that moment where I created something. It's interesting that you have a piece here that's the Fantasy Garden gods. Even the one over here to our left, the tall blue one, that actually I did in the first year I was painting. So it was an experience like that that kind of got me to want to stay an artist, keep doing this for the rest of my life if I can. It's extremely difficult, right? I traded a really hard job at IBM after I got laid off for like the hardest job to be an artist with a family trying to support them. So it's been quite a ride, but I would like to, tell others that, when you find what it is you love, if you do it, do it.
Love it, man. One of my favorite things is, one of my favorite sayings is, once you find something you're good at, you can't quit, and if you've ever been bit, if anybody's ever been bit by the art bug or the creator bug, it's even harder to get off. And it's like the strongest drug ever, because it's kind of like you're in competition with yourself. Can you feel what I'm saying?
Yeah, to a certain degree. I mean, for me, it's about overcoming anxiety with regards to painting. When you work with spray paint, there are so many pieces that I've ruined because a can has malfunctioned or because I sprayed the wrong color or too much, too little. And every time I pick up the can, there's a chance that I could ruin the painting. So it feels good to create what you want, but there's degrees of beyond. Like I have a piece here that's over to the right, the one that has the green meadow, right, with the blazing sunshine and everything. That's the most technically difficult painting I've ever done. I mean, it took me like 70 hours over a month and a half, almost 2 months. But there was a point where I was, 60 hours into it and I needed to spray these light rays on. If I made a mistake, it would ruin the whole painting. There would be no fixing it, period. So it wasn't that I had to just do it once, I had to do it 11 times. It's those kinds of things that I try to let people know the differences in the pieces that I've done. I can tell you which ones have like the most risk that I took. And that's the hardest thing because you could be risking a lot of time to accomplish something and nobody buys it, right? But True. At least you did it. And then it helps to make it easier the next time you're confronted with that.
Dude, man, it's funny that you say that, bro. I wanted to ask, so how did you how did you develop or acquire all of your knowledge over the years? I know a lot of it was self-taught. Did you have to watch a lot of other artists, or did you have to do YouTube University, libraries, tons of books? What was that process?
Honestly, it was basically just trying things. Like when you're working with a medium that nobody uses really to do this, it was more about me imagining how to accomplish something. Now, granted, there are certain elements that were, part of like the presentation or the performance spray paint art. But that was just more along the lines of learning, how to get a hard edge on a circle or things like that. But when it came to having really deep and rich colors, it was more about figuring out how to layer and get to where you want, because I can't mix paint, right? So the only thing I can do is get the color that I want if it's available. So starting out, if I want to have blues and I need shadows to be in there, then that means I have to start with a really dark blue and then layer up from there until it just is hidden in the background. I can't add it in later. Like you don't add shadows in, they emerge as I'm painting. So for me, it's been more about the patience to remember where I'm trying to get to. Because my process is I'll base the board or the canvas with whatever color I want to be the dominant color. So if it's going to be a night piece, it'll be a midnight blue. It'll be a lighter color like white or yellow if I'm going for a daytime piece. And then from there, I've just got to spend time looking at the first bit of sprays I put on and I see something in the board, kind of like a Rorschach test. And then I know I'm done when I see the original image on the board. So it takes a while to build up to that. So I generally hate the painting for like 80% of it until I start to get to that point where it comes into like, okay, I'm getting there, right? And there it is. I see it. All right, I'm almost done. And then it's done and then I feel good.
That is so cool. And like I'm a music person. I don't like to call it hip hop because once you say rap, everybody gets such a bad connotation over it nowadays. But I mean, I guess we can kind of compare this to like guitar players or jazz people because they're kind of doing like improvisation to where, they kind of have an idea where they want to go, but they're kind of putting it together, as the piece comes out. So would you say you're kind of doing that with spray paint?
To a certain degree, yeah. It's an interesting process. I mean, I never know where it's going to end up at because, especially if I see a complicated image, right? Kind of like learning how to do certain things, I've kind of had to make it up. But I've also been impressed by nature, meaning like there are times when I've painted clouds. I remember one time I was painting a cloud and I had ripped off a piece of paper or poster board. And when I was spraying the clouds on, I oversprayed on the flat edge. And so it put this line in it, like a 90-degree angle in a cloud. And I was like, oh my God, I ruined the cloud, right? Because here's this, it's all bubbly. And then here's this straight line. And I got really frustrated at that. And I don't like to start another piece unless I truly am ready to like ruin the other one and then start over. So in those 3 days, I was outside walking with my daughter and the dog. And I looked up in the sky and I saw a straight line in clouds, not like across the bottom, but in the folds and everything. And I was like, okay, well, I guess it does happen. And that kind of reinvigorated me to show me that everything is possible, right? You may think it doesn't look natural, but you'd be surprised what is.
That is a really cool freaking story, man. Oh man, that is so dope. I mean, so like if you had to like describe your painting style or like, like how would you present yourself as an artist?
Sci-fi fantasy landscapes.
Sci-fi fantasy landscapes. I freaking like that. And I looked at your new collection because like now you have like effects going on with them too. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've always wanted to do, and so like for example, the piece, the big tall piece that's in the middle with the guy sitting on the rocks, that was a collaboration I did with Josh Pierce. And if you're on Instagram, you've probably seen his work. He does a lot of light and rings and all kinds of stuff on landscapes. But I always considered him to be like the digital version of me. Like he created the same sort of environments. And I remember I invited him to Spatial headquarters back in 2021. And he's in California, but he came out for NFT NYC because he had success on Nifty Gateway. And it was one of those things where I met him in person, and it was just an amazing moment to meet somebody I followed and admired for doing stuff digitally. And I was like, it'd be kind of cool if we collaborated sometime. And he was like, yeah, totally, let's do it. And then like a year later, I had a painting I was working on, and I'd gotten to a point where I was like, you know what, I'm going to hand this to Josh and see what he does with it. And he did this. Now, that's where it ties into AI. This is what's fun. When I gave him that piece and I said, go do your thing, it took him maybe 4 to 6 weeks to complete his work and put the music in and everything. And that time I'm waiting for it, I'm excited, right? I'm thinking, oh, what's he going to do? I haven't seen anything yet. Oh, this is going to be great. I can't wait. It's the exact same feeling I get now when I take my painting and I put it into Runway. And the only difference is I don't have to wait 4 to 6 weeks. I wait like 4 to 6 minutes, right? But it's that same feeling of like, I wonder what it's going to give back. Like, what does it think my world is supposed to be? And I try to do minimal prompts so I don't feel like I'm just directing it. I kind of just say, I want the clouds to move and make it look like I'm walking, right? And that's how that piece came out. Now, the thing is I had to run 47 different iterations of the original painting. The first image, the first frame of that one on the left is actually the painting. And then everything else is what it did. But after 47 iterations, I ended up settling on number 8. So that just goes to show you like how much the artistic process can come into play, even with AI, because after I saw number 8, I'm like, ooh, let's see what else you could do. What else can you do? And then I realized that was the one that would have saved me some money if I didn't keep going. But in the end, for all the little flaws that are in that piece, it truly is. If you look at the first frame and the last frame, it looks like something I would paint. And that's when I really knew. And the idea of it fleshing out the world for me. So now what I'm doing is I have a collection of 10 on exchange art that I'm doing. And that one's number 2. And I already finished, I closed out the sale on number 1. I'm going to do 10 of them. And it's a really interesting thing because as a one-of-one artist, my goal is to try and figure out not how to get just NFT sold, but how to get someone to have the original painting. And what I've done is, and I've done a lot of different things. I have a collection on Super Rare that kind of uses the same method, but it's not editions. So what I do is, for example, this piece is on exchange art. It's for 1 soul. And if you buy it at the point where 50 of them are sold, it unlocks the original. Whoever holds the most editions on one wallet gets the original painting shipped to them for free. Now, the thing is if everybody buys 1, the person that has 2 gets the original. So if I were to put the original painting in a gallery, I would put it up for sale for like $1,500 to $2,000. And then the gallery would take half. So in essence, you would be getting the painting, if you got it with 2 editions, you would be getting it for like $300 instead of $2,000. So now granted, there could be a situation where somebody's willing to buy 4 or 5. And it's a way for artists to generate revenue so they can keep working and build the collection. And at the same time, it covers the cost for me to ship it anywhere in the world.
That's very smart. I mean, so as far as you doing your art and also you're also hands-on with the business and everything behind that too, because you have to have a really good business mind or a good marketing strategy, even though, or are you just kind of what you think what people would love? Like, where do you get that form of thought from? That's really cool.
Well, like I said, I worked for IBM for 14 years. I mean, I was in leadership and management, and I was a delivery project executive. I was trained to be a leader at IBM, and it was great. It gave me a lot of business skills, project management, things like that. A lot of skills that don't necessarily exist in a lot of artists, even when they come out of college, right? Because they don't give them the ability to learn how to be a small business owner, which is what they need. And so I already understood the importance of delivering. But because of NFTs, it's nice because an artist can manage their own collection from end to end, right? They can manage it where they create it, they can market it, they can display it in virtual worlds like this if they want to, and start to create that atmosphere where people feel like they can start to collect and do stuff. So it doesn't mean that it works. Doesn't mean that I've sold a bunch of them. I've sold out collections of one-of-ones. I like to call them 1-of-2s because there was an original painting before it was an NFT. But if it does take off, I'm hopeful that other artists will follow suit and people will recognize that, they can not only collect a piece, but if they just go that little extra, they might actually get the painting. And that's important because people have been saying about NFTs, well, how do I get something tangible and physical? And they don't even think that they could print it out and frame it and put it up on their walls. So it's hard to get people to recognize the art behind the actual NFT. And so I've been trying to, bring that to the forefront.
You spray on a canvas, right?
Or a wood board. I've done the sides of computer cases. I've done a lot of, anything that I can prep to receive the paint, but I actually started, and the most common thing I spray on is whiteboard. So like when you think of like an office whiteboard, that's my favorite thing to paint on.
And I not only did I see the tweet about the iterations, but also the layers. So like you also like had to do multi layers. Can you explain to us like, well, what is that process and what does that actually mean?
So an example is the piece that's back there by the big one, the one that's yellow with the sun and the clouds and everything. That has over 70 layers of paint on it in some sections. It really comes down to, I start out with, and I have pictures all along the way so people can see how I got to that point. Because of the paint that I work with, like the Montana Golds, it's spray acrylic. what happens is it dusts the board, meaning that when I spray, there'll be a fine mist of dust that'll land everywhere else on the board. So I have to wipe it off as I'm painting. It's almost like tattooing. You know how when somebody gets a tattoo, you'll see all this ink where they were drawing, and then they got to wipe it away and see what's stuck. It's the exact same thing for me. I got to spray and then wipe away and see what's stuck. So every time I go over the board, I'll work in a section, but to get those clouds to where they're at, I have to start in a color that you don't even see right now because it needs to shine through later. Like there's reds in there and there's blues in there, but you don't see it because I've layered on top of it. But that's what gives it the realistic look. And the only way I can get there is to kind of reverse engineer it in my head when I see that initial image on the board, when I'm staring at it. And I have to remember that I'm starting with these layers and working my way out. I can't throw blue in it later because that'll land on other stuff and it won't look right. So the blue that you see on the right side of that piece actually was one of the first few layers that were on the board. But as you get into the center, you have, 70 layers of paint. There's 6 different oranges and 3 different yellows and, white and purples and stuff. So
that is amazing, fam. So what's really cool about episodes of shooting and things that you got going is specifically with you is that you get to teach people more about what you're doing, and you're gonna inspire people to freaking come up behind you. And I think that's kind of what you got going with Finger Lace Crown. You know what I'm saying? Gonna be freaking hitting the red carpet on June 22nd. How are you feeling? Are you feeling like accomplished? Because like I'm freaking proud of you, bro. You are freaking killing.
I appreciate that. It's interesting how that story, like how that movie came to be. So my friend Brandon Lay, who's the director of the film, I had just met him 3 years ago in my studio during a First Friday. He came in and sat on the couch, and he knew other people that I knew because there's 24 artists in the building where I'm at, and we all know people. And he came in and sat down and was talking to me. And that was right at the time when I had sold out my first collection on OpenSea. And it changed my life because I was in a position where I didn't have the ability to fight for custody of my daughter, and I needed to get a lawyer. And I had custody of her all along, but it was like, oh my God, all of a sudden I have to come up with like $10,000 to retain a lawyer. And I didn't have anything. That was right at the pandemic. You know what I mean? Like everything was falling apart. So I put my stuff out there and it sold. And I sold so many of them that it changed everything for me. But I told that story to Brandon, who was sitting on my couch, and I told him the story about one piece. There was one piece that I sold, and the person who bought it wanted the only version of that painting to exist. He didn't want the original. So he said to me, listen, when you get to a certain amount of volume on your collection, I want you to burn the original. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. So, and when I told that to Brandon, he actually said to me, he was like, wait, they really wanted you to burn it? And I was like, yeah, if they spent this much money on the NFT, they wanted it to be the only image of it. And I was okay with the conditions. But when I told him that, that sparked something in his mind. And I kid you not, over the next 4 months, he wrote a movie script that was about an artist that was in the same situation, but it was a huge windfall, right? Like she sold the piece and it was an emotional piece because an ex-lover of hers committed suicide by drowning herself in the ocean. And she kept having this dream about creating this ocean. And when she finally completed it, she had put it in a virtual gallery in Spatial, and someone bought it for $75,000. And it was like a joke that she had put it up there with the story and everything. And funny enough is that the person who plays the person who burned it is Daniel Roebuck, who's been in a lot of movies. He's a local star, but he was like in The Fugitive with Tommy Lee Jones, and he was on The West Wing and everything. But there's this moment where the main character is told by the person who bought the NFT, I want you to burn the original. And because she had the windfall, she had to burn something that had a significant emotional value to her. And that kind of is part of the story. So that whole movie is based really a lot on my experience as an artist, going from the point where you're creating stuff you love to suddenly you have to contemplate destroying it.
Wow. I mean, so did he have to like get more in depth with like interviewing you and stuff, or had you talked to him, enough, to where he could just went home and just was inspired to write the whole script?
Yeah.
Or
He's like that. He actually went and wrote the whole thing. But the fun thing was I had to teach Torres Mosley, who's the star of the film, how to paint like me. And if you saw the interview that I put on Twitter, that kind of captures it. But what was interesting is the fact that no one else in the world knows how to paint like me, because I don't teach classes and I don't like do those kinds of things. And so I had to show her how to like paint like me. So now there's one person out there that actually truly was taught by me how to get to a certain point, not how to do everything, but it's the most I've ever shown anybody. It's like giving the secret ingredient or the secret sauce to somebody. And it feels good because she really did a great job of mimicking me, to the point where she was spraying enough on a board for filming and doing stuff that she did come up to me on several occasions. She's like, I get it. I can see something in the board as I'm spraying, and I want to bring that out. And I'm like, that's exactly the reason why I paint the way I do, because it's so enjoyable to imagine something on the board from minimal input and then bring it out in the end. But it can be heartbreaking if you ruin it, 3/4 of the way through, because there's no fixing it.
I noticed that you referenced that a couple times. I mean, so
Yep.
have you had some pieces that you had to just felt like ruined and you just had to get rid of them throughout the process?
Oh yeah, and Yura can actually attest to this. She was watching a live stream of me. I would hang out in Spatial, and she would come hang out. Her and a couple other people would come and watch me in the studio as I'm doing stuff. But there was one point where I was working on a piece. So the piece that's over there that I did run through AI, there's 2 other paintings underneath that. And the reason being is the first one I was working on, the can the tip had a malfunction, like something wrong with it. And when I would spray, it would start to pull up in the lip around the cap. And there was one point where I had to like throw side to side, and I ended up throwing a huge glob of red paint right into the middle of the piece. There was there's no fixing that, no nothing. And then I remember taking it over to my friend Anthony, who's in the studio adjacent to mine. And I was like, you see, this is what happens. And he's like, oh no, you can fix that. Go ahead and do this or do this and do this, because he paints with a brush and he was thinking how he would fix something. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. I'll just waste a lot of money spraying paint to try and fix this, because if it's not a part of the layer progression, anything I do to fix it will look profoundly different than the rest of the painting. And I've spent a lot of time learning that lesson. And I've had pieces that I've spent 40 hours on. And then I either like picked up the wrong can and sprayed the wrong color, and that ruined it. Or I had to work in the garage, and I would work in the winter, and it'd be freezing cold out there, and the cans would start to sputter. And so it would like shoot little droplets of paint all over. And I've just had to learn, keep the cans warm, shake them and spray them off to the side before it. So it becomes a whole routine in creating the pieces.
And see, that's what's so cool, and I mean, do you video like the process and stuff? Because I feel like spray painters, or people who are gonna be doing different styles of painting coming up in the future. I feel like they could really learn from you. And finger lace crown is a great way. But do you also have archives and stuff that we'll maybe be able to access one day?
I've done it. I've tried it. It's one of those things where the routine for me painting was without filming, and I just get the inspiration to just go do it. It used to be a lot easier when I was working in my garage attached to the house. Now it's in the studio, so I have to go to the studio. When I get there, I don't want to be bothered with setting anything up or doing anything. I just want to grab the paint and go. But there have been times where I have recorded certain pieces, and I have shared some of them on Twitter. The only problem is when a piece takes 40 or 50 hours to do, that's what ends up happening and I've done this, I've recorded one that took me like 30 hours of work. I ended up watching a whole bunch of footage of me just standing around looking like an idiot, staring at the board, and then me spraying. And then when I would speed it up, people would say, well, just speed it up to like 20 times the speed. Then it just looks like a blur of me doing stuff and standing there for longer than I was spraying, and then blur of me doing stuff. So I never liked the presentation. And even when people ask me, like, can you do a demonstration of what you do? It's boring. Like, it's really, really boring. And it wouldn't be fun. It's not like the performance artists where they can make it look cool in 30 minutes and then you get like certain things that are just quick, but it gets the point across. For me, it's like, no, we're not going to get to the cool stuff until probably, 2 weeks from now, or a week from now if I paint every day. So it's like, I don't know when would be the best time to film it.
No, I totally get I totally get it, especially maybe early right now. But I know that it's people that just love art and the process behind it. So people will be freaking thrilled to sit there for freaking 2 weeks or a month. You know what I mean? But as you said, I get where you're coming from, and it's cool that no, you're and that's right on base with any other artist. You know what I mean? Some artists just want to make music, and like you said, you just want to paint and stuff like that. But you also been making history. I mean, all over the freaking map. I mean, you're the first person to sell a freaking NFT in spatial. You know what I mean? So I mean, tell us about that experience. How'd you come up with that?
Well, that was the situation, like I said earlier. I'm on the board of directors now. All right, there's a place in the town over, 2 towns over from me, and there's a building called Juxta Hub. It's a community arts center that's being built in a 35,000 square foot facility. But one of the things that they had there to begin with was a digital makerspace. And the person that was running that, his name is John Edding. What he did was he created these rooms where he had VR and AR. So you had like Quest headsets and Magic Leaps and HoloLenses. And he was just doing demonstrations for the public to show the technology. And I had a friend of mine who's an artist invite me to come out because he was like, hey, I'm going to go check this thing out. I'm not a tech person at all. Can you come along so you can make sense of it for me? And I was like, sure. So when I went out there, I got to put on the Quest headset for the first time. And they had spatial on it. And it was spatial before spatial like we're in right now. It was spatial when it was a corporate enterprise collaboration tool. So there was meeting rooms and conference rooms. But when I got in there, I was like, oh, it'd be so cool if I could hang my art in here. And he was like, oh, you can. All you got to do is bring the image in. And so I linked my Google Drive while I was in the headset and then put one of my paintings up. And that was the moment it clicked for me. And I was like, oh, my God, I have infinite wall space in here. You mean I can send a link out? And this was before they had galleries or anything like that. So I started setting up my own gallery in the space. And then I had someone from the team, on the spatial team, come in. It was Bree. She came in and interviewed me and asked me if I wanted to do like an event and have people show up. And I was like, sure, let's go. And I did. I was like the second person to have a gallery opening in spatial. And when I did, like 25 people came. And down the line, I used that gallery. I would just send links out on Twitter and I would sit on my couch from 3 to 5 every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And people would come in and I would talk to them about the art. And the ooh and ah factor of the art was great. But eventually I sold that first piece and then sold 13 in 24 hours and then 19 within 2 days. And I remember telling Jake, who had just joined the spatial team on the community side, I was like, hey, listen, I sold this. And I kept sending him messages on Slack. I sold another one. I sold another one. Finally, at the end of the day, the co-founders, Anand and Jinha, came in to congratulate me for doing it. And I was like, oh, this is great. Awesome. Thank you for coming. And then 2 weeks later, I got a message from Jake and Jacob, who was the head of growth and business. And he was like, hey, would you like to help other artists come in and find, and do the same thing you did? And I was like, yes. And so from that point, I became, the community evangelist and the artist liaison for spatial. So it changed everything for me. And that's how I'm able to sit on this couch with, my friends here.
Hey, well, we're freaking glad that came about. And Allie was really excited to get you on the couch. So whenever Allie brings high praises, it's always a good thing. And so like, with you making all of this history and stuff like that, like what are you gonna be doing so in the future? Like is your family picking up your painting behind you, or how do you plan on moving forward?
Honestly, I have a lot of things that I'm doing. So I left Spatial at the beginning of the year because they made the pivot to gaming. I was less relevant, right? I was all about art, crypto, and community. And those
Okay.
are three things that aren't the focus right now with Spatial. So they're more on the gaming side of things. So we parted ways. The contract ended, and no bad feelings whatsoever. I still love the platform and everything they're doing. But I've met a lot of people in here and that are trying to do different things. And, I'm helping out on several projects, kind of doing that sweat equity kind of things, hoping that, funding can be raised and blah, blah, blah. So I'm a full-time artist again, and almost forgot how hard it is. And it is extremely hard because
It's tough.
and I've made investments in crypto and done certain things, and that suddenly becomes my rainy day fund. So I'm hoping that the collection that I'm offering right now with AI will become enticing. And here's the one thing that's really cool about it. At the end of the collection, when I get to the 10th piece that I'm going to run through is a 5.5 foot by 5 foot painting I have outside my studio that everyone absolutely loves. But if I hung it in a gallery, it was featured, and I had it a price tag of $12,000, right? It's a really big piece. It's gorgeous, but it's hard to sell. But here's the thing. When it becomes the 10th piece, I'm going to have a certain amount of editions that are sold when it unlocks. So somebody could end up buying that piece for $500, and I'll ship it to them. So once it unlocks, because enough editions have sold to cover the cost of shipping as well as paying me as the artist, it's one of those things where somebody could get an amazing painting for a fraction of the cost. And I'm looking forward to that because that's what most people don't know. When you see these NFTs, they don't track to what size they really are. Like there's pieces in here that are really big that aren't that big in real life. You know what I mean? So like the one to the left with the AI is a 30 by 30. The blue one and the super difficult one, they're 2 feet by 4 feet. These are big paintings that if you put them on your wall, they're gonna take up the wall. So it really is like neat. It's not like you're getting something that's the size of a piece of paper or 16 by 20 or something like that. These are big paintings that you get to own.
Dude, that's what I freaking love about the way that we're being able to sell our product, or or the way that artists are being able to get their product out now, because it just seems like in the entertainment, even though that's such a cliche word, but for us creators and words of that nature, the original had just got lost, and it's just like everybody was buying duplicates of stuff. And, I remember back in the days when a freaking painting might have meant something, when somebody drew that first album cover for us, or,
right.
In your, that you sitting and doing those hours and hours on your product. And now, we can finally put a value on that too, instead of just duplicates, and it's such a beautiful thing that you're allowing your freaking fan base to even be able to get that original, man. That's really cool.
We just have to get to that point. You know what I mean? Like you get to the point. Now, here's the downside to it. The downside to this is that when you offer things up as NFTs, sometimes you find yourself, like, if you don't sell it, but you make the original available under certain conditions, that means I can't sell the original unless it meets those conditions. So if somebody walks in my studio right now and says, hey, I want that painting, I'll give you $2,000 for it. I'll be like, I can't, because it's still a part of this thing. And until I close that out, because let's say I have it up for a month and nobody buys enough to lock the original, fine. Then I close out the sale. If I sell 3 of them or 5 of them, that's what exists. But I want people to get the originals. So I have to keep these and not sell them. And it's very difficult, especially when you need money, right? You get to the point where it's like, I've had to turn down a couple people and say, those aren't for sale, because they're spoken for by the NFT owner, or whatever it may be. So it is hard because you commit to one thing and you may miss something else. And that's kind of the way I am, is I commit to things. I'm loyal to the idea, to a fault. And it's burned me enough times.
there's like a gift and a curse with everything, you know, and the curse is sometimes you can't sell your piece or your product. I mean, but the gift is that, you know, at least you were able to educate people on this whole Web3 process and let them know what's going on. And that builds your brand even more, and your integrity to your loyal fan base is very commendable. So, you know, I want to commend you on that, because, you know, when you're keeping your integrity and when you're doing things that's right, a lot of times we just pass right over that because you could easily, you know, just be a bad person and get the money which you say that you're in need of. So kudos to you, my man.
Yeah, it's hard, but you do what you got to do. And I want people to recognize that, you know, if I can, I've trailblazed with the medium I use. And by now trying to create this actual, you know, this way to get the original painting through NFTs. I think that's a bit trailblazing as well too. I did the same thing with my super rare collection. But you know, when you think about it, if I sell 50 of that piece, that's enough money for me to cover my expenses so I can paint the next one and the next one and live, right? And take care of my daughter. And I'm going to keep painting and I'm going to keep altering these pieces, and AI is going to give us new worlds. And then I can roll into the next collection. So there's that equilibrium I'm trying to find, but there's also that edge I'm trying to get over. And once I get over it, I feel as though this could be a standard, at least for one of one artist, right? Imagine if somebody created a 3D model of a sculpture and did the same thing. You could buy the 3D models and stick them in your space in here, but one person, if they get enough of the additions, can get the actual statue and then put it in their home. So I think that's where I'm trying to get to. Same thing with music. You know, you can find interesting ways, you know, to get people to have something. Like you present a 3-minute song, but you know it's a 7-minute song. Well, if enough people own the 3-minute, they get the full version, you know, or the extended version, things like that. You just have to make it fun to collect.
Look at that, man. And I'm glad we got this recorded because, like I said, I've been knowing that you should be recorded 24/7 because you are just a walking jewel giver, man. And it's like, and it's been so super freaking talking with you. I mean, so like with that being said, like I know that you have more art coming out. Do you have plans on more movies or anything like that? Have you been bit by the cinematography bug?
No, I haven't. Like that was such a one-off thing that happened. It chronicled what I do. My art's in it, the studio's in it. I'm not in the movie. There is one really cool thing I'll tell you about that movie that did happen, and this is a great kind of closing out story. So when I first started painting, I was in Colorado and I was in the garage, and I would go out to the garage with headphones on, and I'd have like a tablet and I would go on YouTube and I would just play certain music while I was painting. And there was one time, you know how it says, if you like this, you should listen to this. And YouTube suggested something and I started playing it. And it was this ambient guitar music. And it was done by this guy named Ryan Lutton. And I was like, as I was painting, I did this piece that was just gorgeous. And I kept listening to the same album he created over and over. Finally, when I was done with the painting, I was so happy with it that I sent him a message on YouTube in his comments, and I was like, hey, just so you know, I was listening to your stuff. What I wasn't doing is I wasn't looking at the video of him. What he does is he would sit on the floor in his bedroom, and he would have all these pedals and all kind of whammy bars and all these things plugged in, and he would sit there with his guitar and improvise the whole time, just making music, which was exactly what I was doing in the garage. I was throwing a board down on the table and improvising my way through. So when I sent him that message, he got back to me and he was like, wow, this is amazing. Can I use it for the cover of my album on YouTube? And I was like, sure. Now, when this movie was made, I actually told my friend, because I was playing his music and thing, you should reach out to him and see if you could ever use his music in the movie. The majority of the music in the movie is done by Ryan Lutton. And there's a couple moments in the film where I actually get teary-eyed because I see my art while his music is playing. And it was one of those things where if nothing ever came from the movie, I'm most happy at the fact that I get to have my art and his music on display together, because a lot of the reason why I felt like I could keep painting was because of how I felt when I was painting. So that made a huge impact on me, and for that to be in the movie, it was just amazing.
I love that, man. That is a bomb story, because it's just another notch under the belt of art, because art affects so many people daily, and we just kind of need to step back and respect it and really reflect on it sometimes, And so, yeah, that's a really cool story, and it's really
He lives
it's
in
really
England too. I was in Colorado and he's in England. He's in Leeds, and I'm just like, oh my god, like. I told him one day, like, if I ever make it and I have a big show, I'm going to fly you in so you can play your music during the show. It's like that's one of my bucket lists.
Well, I tell you what, bro. I mean, you're making it, and you're definitely, if you keep doing what you're doing, I mean, there's no freaking limit for you, bro. I mean, so if the people that hear this back on the YouTube and everything are on multi platforms that we'll be putting this on, how do they stay in touch with you? Are you more accessible on Twitter or the website? How do we get with you?
I'm all over the place. What I would say is like I said, go on Google, type Fine Spray Paint Art, FINE Spray Paint Art, and that'll give you my Instagram, my Twitter. It'll give you the television interview by the local news station that I had a show like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and they came out and interviewed me. It was pretty neat. Like that was another bucket list thing. I've been scratching things off the bucket list. So if you look up Fine Spray Paint Art, you'll find me. And I mean, I've shown my work at Art Basel in Miami. That was a huge one 2 years ago. I was featured down there. I got to meet people from Spatial down there. It was great. And I've shown my work in South Korea, Beijing. I was in the largest NFT show that's ever happened. It was in Beijing and it was Stratosphere, and it was hosted by Sabet. He did this whole thing, and it was amazing. Like we all submitted our work, and it got to be featured in China, and there was so many people that came through and saw the work. So there's been a lot of things like that, and things I should be very, very excited about, and I am. It's just you want to break through and have regular sales and commissions. I want people to come to me and say, can you paint something for me? Because that's when I do really good work.
I like it. I like it. Hey, so y'all heard the man. Y'all heard the man. All you got to do is go to Google and type in Fine Spray Paint Art, and his handles are going to come up. Everything you need is going to come up. And that should hold y'all over until around June 22nd. You know what I'm saying? When it's the red carpet treatment, the premiere of Finger Lace Crown. I want to see it. You make sure you freaking let me and Allie know how we can freaking look at it. Maybe we can.
Once it releases, I'll actually have a cut of the movie, and I can do it in like a spatial space, and everyone can come watch the movie.
Oh, it's a bet. It's a bet. So now we got you freaking locked in. Heck yeah, man. Well, I'll tell you what, it was really a good time kicking it with you. Is there anything else that you'd like to say, before we part ways and before I end this thing out?
No, thanks, Altered. I appreciate you. You've always been there, and I love all the stuff you've been doing in spatial era. It wouldn't be cool unless you were by my side. I see 9 Ghost here. It's nice to see everyone still taking the time to spend. It's a commitment of time, and I'm appreciative of it. So I'm hoping that, when I find that measure of success I'm looking for, that I'll be able to do more in real life events, get to hang out with all of you, do stuff. So yeah, thank you, Kaveli, for the opportunity to do this. It's always fun to talk about what I do.
Freaking right, man. And it was good freaking talking to you. You taught me a lot, man. So I really appreciate you. It was good to get to know you some more. And I do want to thank all of our guests and all of our family and friends who came out here to freaking hang with me, Alta Alley, and the homeboy Tyrone, representing Fine Spray Paint Art, And once again, I am your boy, Kaveli the Punisher White. We kicking it with our homeboy Tyrone. I got my homeboy the alley, all around this joint. Now, listen, we can't take all the credit, okay? The beautiful art and stuff that you see was put together by our good friend Tyrone, and he just went through the process of how he does everything. It's a complicated process. He probably one of the only people doing it right now. He's self-taught. I mean, it was just so dope. I mean, I can't wait to hear this playback and pick up some more of this game. But, we out of here. It's always a good time shooting the shh. You feel me? Peace.
If you can't stand to light my fire, sugar,
yo, thanks, my man. That was
please don't strike
dope,
my
dude.
flint and steel.
Yeah, it's like I said, I'm well rehearsed.
I got blues for you, darling.
It was cool. Like,
Leave me alone and let me heal.
It's not long, but